everyone. How's it going? Um, I was having this issue last stream and it seems to be happening again today. My like my phone is what I use to record and it's like shaking in my tripod and I need to get a new tripod, but I tried another one that I have that goes on my desk and it was also shaking in that. So that was kind of weird. So I don't know if the one that goes on my desk is also really, really unstable, but I put it back in the regular one, and there doesn't even seem to be a difference. So I'm so sorry the camera is kind of shaky on me. I just couldn't do anything at the immediate moment to fix that. I checked the little feet on the tripod and everything seems fine. So, um, I don't know why it's doing that so badly, but here we are, I guess. So I'll just have to deal with that. But other than that weirdness, I'm really excited for the stream. We are reading chapters 89 to 92 today. There is a link to trigger warnings in the description if you need it. And I think we had a lot of excitement last time. And we're starting today with the very ominous chapter title, Cracks and Booms. So that's a thing. So I don't know what's going on with that. Yeah. Oh, Henry, thank you. Um, Another thing is, I don't know if it's just me being naive, but early in the book, when we were like kind of introduced to Shue Shojua, and then he did the thing, he took down like Panru and the eunuchs that were like siphoning off money. And at the time I was like, he's cool. I like him. And now we're in this situation with him and I guess he's like the enemy now and I guess I wasn't expecting that to happen. I don't know. I just thought I should be wary of literally everyone in this series, but for some reason I thought he was cool. Will we get more Yaoi when you is the real question. I am wondering about that as well, Henry. Hi, Vase. So, it's good to see y'all here. Um, you, we rendezvous on Su'an's roof, consolidate their gifts. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna get started because I feel like something really big is about to happen. And if I try to predict it, I will be wrong. So, um, we are on page 161 for chapter 89, Cracks and Booms. And oh, okay, that was a reference to something that I did not understand. Gotcha. Okay. Ge Qingqing had been gone from the capital a little less than half a month. One after the other, the Shi clan's vaults turned up empty. Fortunately, money was still flowing in from the shops in the various regions, now managed by Shidan. Coupled with the 4 million taels of silver Shi Hongxuan had signed over to him already, Shen Zichuan didn't come up totally empty-handed. The 2 million he'd sent via the Northeast Provisions Trail at the beginning of the 4th month had arrived safely in Suzhou. When word of it arrived in Chudu, Ding Tao handed the letter straight to Shen Zichuan. Wiping sweat off his brow, Shen Zichuan waved the sealed letter at Xiao Chiye, who was similarly drenched and already stripping off his clothes to take a bath. From the other side of the screen, he said, "Just read it out to me." Xiao Jiming's message was concise. The silver had arrived in Suzhou without a hitch, and the military provisions for the Libei armored cavalry this summer and autumn had arrived at the warehouse shortly after. Soon, Jiang Qingshan will be transferred to Zhongbo to take up the post of Provincial Administration Commissioner. Does that mean these army provisions from Jueshi were prepared by someone else? Xiao Chiye sank into the bath. As he scrubbed down, he answered, "They were jointly prepared by the Assistant Administration Commissioner of Jueshi, Yang Cheng, the vice prefects under him, and Jueshi's various vice magistrates. They're all old hands under Jiang Qingshan's command, and the most efficient when it came to the preparation of military provisions in the past." Shen Zichuan set the letter on the desk. He thought of saying that, since the provisions hadn't undergone Jiang Qingshan's personal review, they ought to be properly inspected before distribution. But when he considered Xiao Chiye wasn't managing Li Bei's military affairs, he thought the better of it. Xiao Jiming knew his business. An outsider like him needn't interfere. He let the idea drop. Xiao Chiye slipped a dark, wide-sleeved robe over his inner garment. He could hold his own against these solemn colors. Even with the robe hanging loosely over his shoulders, he cut an imposing figure. He picked up a cup of tea that had gone cold. Gu Jin went to the Xue Manor last night. Qian Sheng and Shifu are most likely detained in one of the small towers. No common place could trap Shifu. Shen Zichuan touched the brush on the desk. "I want to see for myself." Xue Xiuzhuo is vigilant. If he discovers us and transfers Xiansheng and Shifu elsewhere, we'll really be looking for a needle in a haystack. Xiao Chiye removed Shen Zichuan's crown and let his hair fall loose. "I've set some men to watch the Xue Manor on rotating shifts. We need to think of a safer method." "There's one thing I still can't figure out." Shen Zichuan let Xiao Chiye comb his hair for him. His strokes were clumsy, not at all like one would expect from the popular second young master. How did he empty out the Shi clan's vaults? Ge Qingqing didn't find anything in Qinzhou either. I'm not sure if the comment that his strokes were clumsy, not at all like one would expect from the popular second young master, is that implying that Xiao Chiye, doesn't really have experience being with girls? Maybe, I guess, because maybe he would have combed their hair for them otherwise, and he would, I don't know, have a hairbrushing technique? Or just, am I... Okay. I was like, I'm not sure if that's how I'm supposed to take that comment or what that means. Xiao Chiye met Shen Zichuan's eyes in the mirror. "Can't figure it out? I already did." Shen Zichuan looked back at him, waiting. "It doesn't matter if they are transported by land or water. As long as they were transported through established trade routes, those 4 million taels of yours would all be subjected to inspections at various regional checkpoints." He knows this too. So there's no point in checking the trade routes. As Xiao Chiye spoke, he plaited a little braid the width of a finger into Shen Zichuan's hair. Every government post Xue Xiuzhuo's held throughout his career is a key position. A chief supervising secretary audits the accounts in the various regions, and when it's close to the court official's feast, he must deal with the transport office, which is responsible for organizing and transporting the local taxes and tributes paid to the imperial court. No position could make it any more convenient for him to smuggle the silver in and out of Chudu. Suddenly enlightened, Shen Zichuan wondered aloud, but where did he hide it all? The Xue Manor is larger than the Shi Manor, but the family is less established in Chudu. They don't have as deep a foundation as the Yao clan, in either sense. Even if he dug, he can't hide that much money. That depends on how he plans to use it. Xiao Qie withdrew his fingers, and Shen Zichuan's inky hair cascaded down like water. It was soft to the touch, possessing not an ounce of the hostility of the rest of him. He pressed down on Shen Zichuan's shoulders from behind, and their faces appeared in the mirror together. His hometown is Jincheng, and Hezhou is just south of it. The Yan clan dominates Hezhou's waterways, and they have business dealings with the Shi clan's ships in the ports of Jueshi. Now that we've removed Shi Hongshuan from the equation, Xue Xiuzhuo will have to find people who can manage money as well as Shi Hongshuan if he wants his silver to start moving again. And that is none other than the Yan clan of Hezhou. If I had to guess to whom he entrusted this silver, it's the Yan clan. The Yaoi clan goes deep. Yeah. Shen Zichuan had never been to Hezhou, but he'd heard of the formidable Yan clan. Unlike the Shi clan, where legitimate sons of the principal wife ruled the roost regardless, the Yan clan prized ability. It didn't matter whether one was lawful or common birth, as long as they had talent. During the first year of the reign of Xiande, the Yan clan made their fortune trading tea in Hezhou. They rarely entered Chudu other than to pay tributes. Shen Zichuan knew very little about them. He thought that Xiao Qie was likely right, but he couldn't go without poking a little fun. Argong's braids are so prettily done. Truly a cultured man of many talents. This Argongza has had plenty of practice, Xiao Qie teased in return. Aren't Snowcrest's little braids pretty? I plaited all of them. I put my heart and soul into saving up for a betrothal gift, Shen Zichuan said. Yet you think me the same as Snowcrest? Xiao Qie bent lower and gestured into the mirror. A horse, All sorts of expressions danced in Xiao Qie's eyes. Pressed tightly like this, back to chest, Shen Zichuan remembered the last time they'd ridden the horse on that rainy night. Although the marks of those love bites no longer lingered on his smooth neck, it blushed nearly as red when Xiao Qie whispered into his ear. Shen Zichuan lifted his chin, exposing the exquisite curve of that neck. It shone like the crescent moon in the dim light, softened by shadows, innately smooth and lustrous. All kinds of neck mentions, so we got a drink. The horse thing. I cannot. He whispered, "Am I?" Xiao Qie fell under his spell. His lips brushed the corner of Shen Zichuan's eye, then curved in a smile as he stared at the man in the mirror. How could I bear to think so? You are the master of me. I only want to take you riding. The anxiety that had weighed on Shen Zichuan for days dispersed, just a touch, in Xiao Qie's arms. When he smiled, it carried a hint of seductive allure that even he himself didn't notice. The temperature in Chudu rose precipitously in the 5th month. They'd scarcely enjoyed the refreshing coolness of spring when the summer heat crashed over them. The lower-ranking officials weren't permitted to take sedans as they went about their tasks, so they all hiked up their robes and fanned themselves whenever they could. They were drenched in sweat as they entered their offices and drenched again as they exited, lips peeling and faces red under the blazing sun. After receiving a succession of rapid promotions in the wake of his audits of the Imperial Army's accounts, Liang Cuishan had finally caught his breath. He was now working under Pan Lin, the Vice Minister of the Ministry of Revenue. handling the task of auditing the taxes of the various regions outside Chudu. Pan Lin, for his part, was overwhelmed with gratitude toward Xiao Qie. Not 2 days after he returned home from the river banquet, Li Jianheng had granted his father, Pan Qiangjie, a pardon for his offense in the matter of the ditches. Instead of being banished to the frontier as they'd feared, he received a salary suspension pending investigation and was excluded from this year's annual review. Xiao Qie had never publicly vouched for or recommended Liang Cuishan for promotion, but those officials were all astute men who knew Liang Cuishan was someone Xiao Qie had personally spoken of to the emperor. Thus, though Xiao Qie said not a word, Pan Lin had taken Liang Cuishan under his wing, sparing him from Wei Huaigu's reproach. It's the Grand Hua Qi wedding next month. We'll need to familiarize ourselves with the processes the Ministry of Rites sent over, and the expenses must all be clearly calculated so we can give a flawless answer when the Empress Dowager inquires after the wedding banquet. Pan Lin drank his chilled green bean soup. He was so hot, his back was soaked in sweat. Although Pan Lin was some years younger than Liang Cuishan, he had joined the imperial court earlier, and his rank was high. Whenever Liang Cuishan didn't refer to himself as this humble subordinate before him, he still had to say, this pupil. Liang Cuishan was warm too, but they were in the office compound and had to satisfy the demands of etiquette. He couldn't strip off his robe as he liked. The censors from the Chief Surveillance Bureau would most certainly chastise him if they saw. He dabbed his forehead with the handkerchief and nodded. This humble subordinate shall heed your excellency's instructions. Not a single line shall be left off this account. Pan Lin gave him orders on a few other matters before stepping out to get on a sedan. There were still some details to verify at the Ministry of Rites. Liang Cuishan was painfully aware of the debt of gratitude he owed Shen Zichun and Xiao Qie for their recognition of his worth. He didn't dare be shoddy in his work, and promptly set about reconciling the accounts. Yet he had sat for only a moment when he heard someone barge in. It was midday, and few people were about in the office. Liang Cuishan hurried down the steps to greet the visitor. Encountering an unfamiliar face, he asked, "Can I help you find someone?" The man was sweating profusely as he shoved a missive into Liang Cuishan's hands. This humble subordinate is an official from the Northeast Provisions Trail Postal Relay Station. Your Excellency, this is an urgent report dispatched from Bai Majo last night. It comes with the authentication tally belonging to the Provincial Administration Commission of Jueshi. This is a matter of extreme urgency. The Northeast Provisions Trail. The moment Liang Cuishan heard this name, he knew the dispatch must concern Li Bei. He accepted the missive and demanded, why was this delivered to the Ministry of Revenue? All communications from Li Bei are considered military reports. They should be delivered to the Ministry of War. This is an urgent report dispatched from Bai Majo, the man repeated. It bears the tag of the Ministry of Revenue. Your Excellency, please present it to the minister's desk quickly. The consequences of delaying this express report aren't something you or I can afford to bear. Liang Cuishan ran back inside with the relay report under his arm and hurried over to Wei Huaigu's office, only to find him out. An attendant accepted the documents in his place, but seemed to barely take note of them. He told Liang Cuishan not to wait, saying the minister would handle it later. Something about this wasn't right. How could an express relay report be handled so flippantly? Wei Huaigu's people were clearly stalling for time. Liang Cuishan's heart was pounding as he retreated. Instead of returning to the compound, he lifted his robe and raced to the office of the embroidered uniform guard. It was a blisteringly hot day, and Liang Cuishan was panting by the time he arrived. Without even taking a moment for a sip of water, he burst into the courtyard and requested to see Shen Zichuan. "What's the matter?" Chao Tianya asked as he let him in. "Did your excellency run all the way here?" "It's urgent." Liang Cuishan had no attention to spare for Chao Tianya. When he entered and saw Shen Zichuan, he blurted, "Your excellency, this humble subordinate has an important matter to discuss with you." Shen Zichuan gestured for Chao Tianya to serve tea. Setting aside the documents on his desk, he fixed his gaze on Liang Cuishan. "What's wrong?" Liang Cuishan didn't dare sit. He took a deep breath. This humble subordinate received an express relay report earlier at the Ministry of Revenue, dispatched from Bai Mazhou in Jueshi. It concerns the Northeast Provisions Trail. This humble subordinate delivered the report to the top, but never saw Minister Wei and could only pass it to an attendant. This assuredly concerns Li Bei. "Your Excellency, I fear there's been some accident with the military provisions sent to Li Bei last month." Shen Sichuan rose to his feet. "Go to the Imperial Army's office and inform the Marquis at once. Take my horse. Tell anyone who asks that you're on an urgent mission for the embroidered uniform guard. Spur the horse all the way there." Although the preparation of the military provisions, supplies of rice, wheat, and millet, was handled by Bai Mazhou in Jueshi, the inspection of them was the responsibility of the Ministry of Revenue. The military provisions had a direct impact on Li Bei's war efforts for the year. If Wei Huaigu was indeed purposely delaying this report, there had to have been a slip-up somewhere for which he didn't dare shoulder responsibility. The sweltering heat was unseasonable. It was only the beginning of the 5th month, yet it felt like the height of summer. The sun was scorching at midday. By the afternoon, the weather had turned overcast and windy, the air thick with the humidity of an approaching rainstorm. Wei Huaigu sat in his chair for a full hour holding that relay report, the back of his robe soaked through with sweat. He felt dizzy. Several times he opened his mouth to speak, but couldn't say a word. At last, he steeled himself and jolted to his feet. "Prepare my sedan. We're going into the palace." Xiao Chiye, returning from the drill grounds at Mount Feng, was still riding toward the city when fat raindrops began pelting down on him. Meng swooped to perch on his shoulder. As he reached the gates, he saw Chao Tianya galloping toward him. Before Chao Tianya could close the distance, Ding Tao came spurring over from the other direction. He tumbled out of his saddle and reported in a quavering voice, "Your lordship, it's bad news. There's been an urgent military dispatch. The Hanma tribe trespassed into our territory the day before yesterday and encountered Shizi on the eastern mountain range. Shizi..." Ding Tao's tearful voice rose. "Shizi has been severely wounded. Our cavalry lost." Chao Tianya yanked his horse to a skidding halt. Thunder exploded in the sky above, blasting apart the darkness cast by the billows of grim clouds. Rain crashed down in torrents. Xiao Chiye was still astride his horse. For the first time, his face revealed a dazed expression, as if he didn't understand Ding Tao's words. In the nearly 30 years since Xiao Fengshu established the Li Bei armored cavalry, Li Bei had never suffered such a defeat. Even when Xiao Jiming had led his light cavalry to pursue the Hanma tribe for several hundred li in the past, he had returned from the desert unharmed. Xiao Chiye had never thought his eldest brother would lose. Never. Well, that's the end of the chapter. Appropriately titled, I guess. We are on page 171 for chapter 90, which is called Veteran General. I sure hope we're not cooked, Henry. It doesn't sound good. Heavy rain churned up the puddles at the palace entrance, where Xiao Qia's horse had just reached the palace gates. Red silk umbrellas emerged one after the other from a line of sedans, all of them sheltering important ministers of the third rank and above. The Minister of War, Chen Zhen, deliberately slowed his pace to wait for Xiao Qia at the foot of the vermilion steps leading up to the palace hall. When he saw Xiao Qia striding over in the rain, he began, "Tsa'an, listen to me. No army in the world is invincible. A defeat is a lesson that will guide one toward future victory. Jiming has been fighting with the Biansha's Hanma tribe for years. He's only human." Chen Zhen had known Xiao Fengshu for many years. He spoke bluntly, but Xiao Qia understood he meant well. Xiao Qia nodded, his face devoid of expression. Together, they ascended the stairs and waited before Mingli Hall to be summoned. As the rain soaked his shoulders, even the faint light of the lanterns seemed to shrink back from him. An umbrella suddenly moved overhead to shelter Xiao Qia. Shen Zichuan had come up beside him, holding the umbrella aloft to shield him from the deluge. Standing shoulder to shoulder, the two figures in drenched red robes brought to mind a pair of wicked gods emerging from a rainy night. That is an image. A moment later, Fuman lifted the curtain, made his obeisance to the court officials waiting outside, and began to summon them in one at a time. Hai Liangyi was called first, followed by the various ministers from the Grand Secretariat, and finally, Xiao Qia. Not even Shen Zichuan was allowed to enter unless invited. Xiao Qia hung back, his gaze on Shen Zichuan laden with too many emotions. In an instant, he turned from a valiant, vicious hound into a lone wolf that had strayed from its pack. Oof. Shen Zichuan suppressed the urge to stroke Xiao Qia's cheek. He couldn't. Not here. They stood for what seemed a long time in the shadows of the palace walls, weighed down by shackles invisible to the eye. Xiao Jiming was severely wounded, and there were no other capable generals in Li Bei. The war was ongoing. Chu Du must appoint a new general to Li Bei to take over Xiao Jiming's command. But this person couldn't be Xiao Qia. It seemed Qi Juyan's remark a year ago had been prophetic. She had warned Xiao Jiming that the Li Bei armored cavalry needed a new general. Too much military power was concentrated in their family's hands. If the Li Bei armored cavalry could only follow a general with the surname Xiao, then once the banner of the Xiao clan fell, the Li Bei armored cavalry would weaken, unable to sustain its former glory. The grandson heir, Xiao Shun, was only 6 years old. If Xiao Jiming was out of the equation, Xiao Qia was the only feasible successor to the Li Bei armored cavalry. Yet, he was in Chudu, and Chudu would never release him unless the heir consort, Lu Yizhi, entered the capital with the young Xiao Shun to replace him as hostages. Xiao Qia's willfulness had always been a bluff, and now he'd once again been plunged into a chasm with no way out. His heart howled with longing for home, but all he could do was gaze at Shen Zichuan in silence. Other than Shen Zichuan, no one else would understand. "Your lordship?" Fuman prompted in a whisper. Xiao Qia went in. "We're really in it now." The Ministry of Revenue assigned officials to check the military provisions before they were dispatched via the Northeast Provisions Trail. If there was a problem with the provisions, Why didn't the Ministry of Revenue report it then? Chen Yu was first to step forth and condemn Wei Huaigu without even taking time to pen a formal memorial. The express relay report was delayed 4 whole hours after arriving in Chudu. If we issue the order to recall the provisions now, we'll have to brave the rain and treacherous conditions on what's already a difficult route. It will take 4 days to reach Li Bei. Wei Huaigu, you're going to get people killed. Wei Huaigu said nothing. He knelt on the floor like a statue and didn't dispute a word of Chen Yu's tirade. The moment Xiao Qia entered, the hall fell silent. Some ministers stared at the ground, while others pressed a hand to their foreheads, stricken. The crash of rain outside was deafening, but the suffocating heat of the hall was worse. "Sa'an," Li Jianheng began, then hesitated. "Take a seat." Xiao Qia bowed, but didn't sit. This humble subject has only just dismounted and has heard no details. What's happened in Li Bei? What the hell? Has no one told the Marquis about such a serious matter? Li Jianheng flung the report to the ground below the throne. Wei Huaigu, tell him yourself. Wei Huaigu lowered his head, not looking at Xiao Qia. Something went wrong with the military provisions transported to Li Bei last month. According to the relay report from Yang Cheng, the Assistant Administration Commissioner of Jueshi, there was mold in the shipment of rice, yet it was still distributed after arrival at Li Bei. Thousands of soldiers fell ill the night before the battle. Who in the hall would dare look Xiao Qia in the eye? The Xiao clan, who guarded the nation's frontier, had rendered tremendous meritorious service 5 years ago when they came to the emperor's aid after the fall of Zhongbo. Among the Biansha tribes, the Hanma was the toughest to fight, and it was Xiao Jiming alone who defended the entirety of the northeast against their incursions. Yet, as their reward, 2 emperors and their governments had imprisoned the Xiao clan's youngest son in Chudu, and let his eldest brother, who selflessly shed his sweat and blood in their defense, eat moldy and rotten grain. How would anyone have the guts to meet Xiao Qia's gaze? The military provisions were prepared by the Provincial Administration Commission of Jueshi, Xiao Qia said without moving a muscle. If Yang Cheng knew of this, why did he wait until the provisions arrived in Li Bei to report it? He's the Assistant Administration Commissioner of the Southwest. I know of no grudge nor enmity he could have with Li Bei. Why would he risk his head to do this? The officials from the Ministry of Revenue triple-checked the provisions, and the official documents all reported new grain from last year's harvest. But now, it's turned old and moldy. These are all minor officials of low rank. So again, why would they do such a thing? The supplies arrived in Li Bei via the Northeast Provisions Trail, and the supervisor in charge of the granary from the Li Bei Armored Cavalry also had to inspect them before distributing them to the troops. For such a large shipment of moldy grain to make its way into the mouths of the officers and soldiers at the frontier pass, these layers of painstaking arrangements can only be described as methodical. Someone sabotaged this somehow. I don't know how they got away with it, but that's what it's sounding like to me. Yeah, but who? I don't know. His voice gained more gravity with every word. The Li Bei Armored Cavalry has guarded the pass for 30 years. A loss on the field merits punishment, but let me say this before everyone here. A minor defeat for Li Bei is a blow to our Xiao clan, but a major defeat is a crisis for our great Zhou. For several years, the Hanma tribe has been lurking on the eastern side of the Hongyan Mountains range, waiting for their opportunity. 5 years ago, after defeating Zhongbo's troops, The Hanma led the men and horses of the rest of the 11 tribes to the very gates of Chudu without hesitation. It has been a mere 5 years, yet the page on the tragic massacre of the 6 prefectures of Zhongbo has somehow already been turned. We have yet to redress our nation's humiliation, and now we're going to allow one of our own to add another strike? Color drained from the faces of everyone present. Xiao Chia held nothing back. He had come tonight to raise hell. Someone was playing games with soldiers' lives, and they wanted to dismiss him with that same old bureaucratic nonsense? Not a chance. He was out for blood, and would pursue this case to the end. All the rest be damned. He was done playing nice. The Minister of Justice, Kong Chiu, was the first to find his voice. The adulteration of military provisions can no doubt be traced to those at the bottom rung who resell grain at a profit. Many merchants with full granaries made a fortune during the famine in Zhongbo a few years back. But the laws in place nowadays are strictly enforced. I never expected officials and merchants were still colluding to commit such unconscionable crimes. We owe our generals in Libei a thorough investigation. This humble subject requests a joint trial by the 3 judicial offices, supplemented by an investigation in both Baimazhou and Chudu, to be conducted by the embroidered uniform guard. We must get to the bottom of this travesty. That's not all. Another urgent matter requires our attention. The Minister of War, Chen Zhen, cast a glance at Xiao Chia. The military provisions for the 5 commanderies of Qidong also come from Baimazhou. We must dispatch an urgent report to Marshal Qi. This grain cannot be distributed any further. And how shall we make up for the shortage? Xiao Chia's tone was icy. Those 2 shipments of provisions represent the bulk of the harvest amassed in the 3 major granaries of Jueshi last year. Now that you're recalling them, what will you send in their place? Where will you find the grain? If these provisions aren't replenished within 5 days, Libei and Qidong will be fighting a war on empty stomachs. This is a question of feeding hundreds of thousands of soldiers. We'll borrow from Huaizhou, Hezhou, and Sizhou, Hai Liangyi said decisively. The debt from these loans shall be borne by the imperial court. This is an emergency. The state treasury can't withdraw so much money on short notice to purchase the grain outright. So we can only promise to exempt these 3 prefectures from taxes for the next 2 years. Baimazhou gathered all the grain reserves from the 13 cities into these 2 shipments of provisions. The 3 prefectures the Grand Secretary mentioned cannot compare to that. Not to mention, these 3 prefectures are distant from one another, scattered all across the empire. Preparing and coordinating the shipments alone will take several days. Tell Qi Juyin that Qidong's military provisions will be halved this year, Hai Liangyi instructed. They have military fields to sustain them. They won't starve. Hezhou is right beside Qidong, but the grain from Sizhou and Huaizhou must be shipped out tonight. Although he was sick, he remained clear-headed. Ershao is wounded. He oughtn't remain long at the front line. The Prince of Libei is ill and is similarly unable to lead. Chen Zhen, draw up a list of our generals and hand it to me in an hour. Within 3 days, Chudu must deploy a capable officer to Libei to assume command. In minutes, Hai Liangyi had taken charge of the situation and given the final word. It was clear Wei Huaigu wouldn't get away this time. Xiao Chia didn't intend to let him off. The only reason he wasn't at his throat right now was that the deployment of a commanding general was far more important. Yet Wei Huaigu's behavior was peculiar. He knelt right where he was, as all the while the ministers were speaking and plans were being made, and said not one word in his own defense. After retreating from the court, the officials gathered in Mingli Hall's brightly lit side room. Hai Liangyi couldn't bear the cool nights, so Kong Qiu draped an overcoat over him. He gathered the folds of it around himself and gestured for everyone to take a seat. The impeachment memorial will be on the Grand Secretariat's desks tomorrow, Sen Yu said. How many times is this for the Wei clan? His Majesty is mindful about showing mercy. The incident with Wei Huaixing over the assassination case didn't implicate Wei Huaigu, and Wei Huaigu never admitted fault for what happened with the public ditches either. But what about these military provisions? He can't escape punishment for negligence and dereliction of duty. One's duties as an official in the imperial court have nothing to do with one's family background and standing, said Hai Liangyi. We mustn't find fault with others on the basis of their surname. If a man makes a mistake, then impeach him. Hai Liangyi had yet to drink a single drop of water that night, but he seemed tireless as he looked at Xiao Qie. Heir Xiao has been leading the troops for several years. If he was able to fight his way out of the Hanma tribe's siege and return to Li Bei, his life is not in danger. Your lordship needn't be so anxious. Chudu will work through the night to get Li Bei anything it lacks. Xiao Qie understood. To maintain the status quo amid the current tensions, Hai Liangyi could never let Xiao Qie return to Li Bei. There was no question of this. Xiao Jiming was defeated, but he wasn't dead. And even if Xiao Jiming died, Xiao Qie still couldn't return home, because there was still Xiao Fengshu. That's an awful thought. Like, that if his brother died, he couldn't go back and see his family in Li Bei. Blue, I mentioned it before. The camera, I don't really know why. My tripod is a little bit unsteady, but it normally is pretty subtle. For some reason, last stream and this stream, and I was trying to set it up different before the stream. It's been really shaky. I even tried another little tripod that I have, and it was still shaky. So it's okay, no big deal. But I just so everyone knows, it's actually really weird. It's in the same spot. It's the same tripod. So I don't know. Maybe there's like, maybe my apartment floor is shaking and I just can't tell. You're worried that there's an earthquake or something. Yeah. We don't really get those here, but who knows? Where? Anyway, yeah, I'm just, the fact that he can't go back almost like no matter what. It's like he's so trapped, and now his brother is injured and it's like he still can't really do that much about it. It sucks. He sat facing an entire room of veteran ministers, yet Xiao Qie was terribly calm. There are many decent generals in Chudu, but those who can adapt to the battlefields of Li Bei are few and far between. The eastern Hongyan Mountains border the desert, and we're nearing the hottest days of the year. The heat on the frontier is brutal. I'm afraid any officer born in the southwest will be unsuitable. He had reacted quickly to the situation. So quickly he appeared unassailable. In the hall, he had preemptively laid out the case regarding the military provisions, and now he was telling Hai Liangyi that the new general deployed to Li Bei had to be someone from Li Bei or Qidong. He didn't want an armchair strategist who was all talk and no action. Hai Liangyi nodded approvingly at Xiao Qie. At a moment like this, one should not be swayed by emotion or act impulsively for personal gain. That Li Bei lacked a commander was an indisputable fact. Skilled deputy generals like Zhao Hui were formidable, but they were all men whom Xiao Fengshu had personally taught. These deputies were meant to take on the tasks of coordinating and assisting a commander. They could lead a squadron of soldiers to outflank the enemy, but they couldn't convince their fellows that they were fit to lead all of Li Bei. Yet, since the reign of Xiande, the Zhou Empire had faced a dearth of able generals. Of the 4 great generals, one was injured, and other than Zuo Qianqiu, the remaining 2 had their own important duties to attend to. The talents that emerged later were all high-ranking military officers from Qidong, core members of Qi Juyan's army that Qi had trained from scratch. It was Qidong's military affairs they were familiar with. To lend any of them to Li Bei was easier said than done. Besides, the Qi clan was about to enter a marriage alliance with the Hua clan. If a general from Qidong took command in Li Bei, even temporarily, this would break the careful balance again, and make it difficult for the emperor to hold Qidong in check. Who should be assigned? Even Hai Liangyi's head hurt thinking about it. As they sat burning with anxiety inside the hall, Fuman hurried in from outside. Your Excellencies, look who's here. Xiao Qia turned his head and sprang to his feet. The entire hall followed suit, rising one after another. Hai Liangyi stepped forward to welcome the new arrival personally. The man who garnered such respect peeled off his hooded overcoat, revealing white hair. He greeted Hai Liangyi, then looked at Xiao Qia. This humble one raced through the night to reach Chudu and seek an audience with His Majesty regarding the crucial matter of Li Bei. There was a lump in Xiao Qia's throat as he cried, "Shifu!" Suo Qianqiu didn't stop to make conversation with him. Instead, he greeted Hai Liangyi with a smile. It's been many years since I last saw the Grand Secretary. I hope you are still in good health. Hai Liangyi gripped Zuo Qianqiu's wrists. As old as Commander Zuo may be, can you still serve your country? There's a footnote. Adapted from Old as Lian Po is, Can he still eat? From Joy of Eternal Union, reminiscing the past at the Beigou Pavilion at Jinkou by Xin Qiji, a poet and military leader during the Southern Song Dynasty. Suo Qianqiu sighed. Although my face has aged and my hair has grayed, I have yet the strength to draw a bow. There is no need for the Grand Secretary to worry. I came for 2 reasons. First, to stand in temporarily for Jiming and take command of the troops in Li Bei, and second, to deliver a message from Xiao Fengshu. The entire room listened with rapt attention. Something stirred in Zuo Qianqiu's eyes as he looked at Xiao Qia. The might of the Prince of Li Bei has reverberated like a tiger's roar through the Hongyan Mountains for so many years. His son has suffered a loss, and as his old man, he wishes to personally reclaim victory from Amor of the Hanma tribe. The rain thundered down. A gur falcon let out a long cry as he swooped among the dark clouds of Chudu. So that means Xiao Fengshu is going to personally take revenge, and he's ill, so that doesn't really bode well. Nina, that's actually I did not think about that. The weight balance on my floor has changed, so my movement against the desk is making a difference. It happens even when I don't touch the desk, though, so it's weird. But, I didn't think about that. I did move my shelf, so I don't know if different weight on the floor. I mean, my floor is completely not level at all, so who knows? That would make sense. I don't know. I can't move it back now. I changed a bunch of stuff around, so I don't know. Anyway, I just need a better tripod. And maybe like to put something under one of the legs. Who knows? But yeah, I'm concerned. I'm concerned for Xiao Fengshu right now. Because that sounds like a mission that he could die in. At the farthest edge of the world, the banner of Li Bei flapped in the wind. In that rain, like heavy ink, Xiao Fengshu, who hadn't set foot on the battlefield for decades, donned his armor and strapped on his blade to lead the troops into battle. The wind tore at Xiao Fengshu's cape, and he swept off his incongruous bamboo hat to look up at the sky. Amor. Xiao Fengshu's voice was deep. He raised an arm in the rain to release his Li Bei gerfalcon and laughed into the wind. Li Bei has drawn a border in the east. Why are you trespassing? I told you decades ago. The Hongyan Mountains are the stomping ground of my Li Bei armored cavalry. His voice reverberated through the pelting rain. The armored cavalry behind him, cloaked under black armor, drew out their blades as one. In that moment of unified motion, their oppressive might called to mind a crouching behemoth, suddenly opening its eyes. That's the end of the chapter. Oh, Blue, you had to get furniture with adjustable legs. And yes, Elsie, you didn't miss the entrance of Xiao Fengshu. You just missed when they were first talking about the letter from him. So, I'm glad. And, oh, Nina, if you have a lip balm on your coffee table, it rolls off if it's on its side. Yeah, I don't know if my floor is that bad, but something weird is going on. But this tripod has always been... It's, like, extended at its full height with the phone attached. It's just not very good. I'm going to order another one that's hopefully pretty steady. So that, I hope that helps. So I think now is a good time to take a break. When we come back, we will be on page 183 for chapter 91, which is called Li Bei. So I will be right back in 5 to 10 minutes. Hi, I'm back. Uh, Blue, we were just talking about my schedule of when I start reading Case File. And Blue, Meat Bun is a holiday gift. Don't know if you love us or hate us. Well, I love y'all. But, you know, I put myself through the Meat Bun torture too, so I don't know. Yeah, we'll be starting Case File on December 22nd, as long as I don't have to move anything around in like the upcoming streams. So that will be kind of like a very weird holiday thing, I guess. Kind of, I didn't purposely do it that way, but as I was like looking at my schedule, it turned out like, oh, it'll be like almost Christmas and we're just starting Case File then. So that'll be interesting. There'll be like interesting vibes for the holidays and the new year to be just reading Case File, but I'm really excited for that series. I am sad that we'll be taking a break from this one, but we still have a ways to go before we are there. So we are on page 183 for chapter 91, Li Bei. Suo Tianqiu had arrived in the nick of time, leaving no chance for Chudu to select a general of their own. Thunder on Jade Terraces, Suo Tianqiu was known far and wide for his military achievements. He was the great general taught by Silver Spear of Snowy Pass, Feng Yisheng, and the senior of Xiao Jiming, Qi Juyin, and Lu Guangbai. It had been years since he had walked away from the Tianfei watchtower, and few had seen him since. He had no private troops. He was a child from a humble background who had been adopted by Ji Wufan, the chief commander of the Embroidered Uniform Guard during the reign of Yongyi. He had no family background to create conflicts of interest. His willingness to come out of obscurity and lead the troops was something Hai Liangyi couldn't have dared to hope for. As Zuo Tianqiu waited for Li Jianheng to summon him, he He stood with Xiaoqie under the eaves, watching the rain. I had to make haste, so I didn't bring any message for you. Zuo Qianqiu's overcoat was half soaked. He hadn't stopped once on the entire journey except to change horses. He spoke deliberately. Jiming has returned to the camp, and the military medics are taking good care of him. Don't worry. He was silent on the extent of Xiao Jiming's injuries. Xiaoqie looked down. After a pause, he asked, "How is he injured?" Zuo Qianqiu gazed out into the rainy night. There are some words I will only say to you while standing here. Someone tampered with Jiming's food. They got Zhao Hui too. The squadron dragged their sick bodies to the battlefield and just happened to encounter a Moor, the toughest of the lot. Jiming received 3 great gashes. It was Zhao Hui who tumbled off his horse and, with the 10 or so remaining soldiers, carried his general from the battlefield on his back and broke through the siege. Xiaoqie clenched his fists. There was darkness in Zuo Qianqiu's eyes, but his voice remained level. Jiming has fought battles in the past while in ill health. After so many years pushing himself on the battlefield, he may seem fit on the surface, but in truth, he's plagued by old ailments. This time, he has badly damaged his constitution. We should see it as an opportunity. Let him recuperate for half a year and build up his strength again. Zuo Qianqiu had taught both brothers, and he couldn't be any clearer about their temperaments. Xiao Jiming was soft on the outside, but tough inside. He didn't inherit Xiao Fengshu's preternaturally strong and healthy physique, nor his father's uncompromising, hard-nosed approach. And whatever he lacked, Xiaoqie possessed. Perhaps a lesser man would have been jealous, but Xiao Jiming cherished his family. He had inherited the compassion and benevolence of his mother, the princess consort of Libe. It was so ingrained in his nature that he had never harbored a single ill thought toward his younger brother. He saw himself as a sanctuary for the family and did all he could to heal his wounds himself. All these years, he had never uttered a cry of pain. Lu Guangbai had repeatedly said that he was only human. But though Xiao Jiming indeed had mortal desires, he had forced himself to become the indestructible guardian of Libe. Oh, Henry, not the 3,000 steps. I'm not liking this situation. I would like Xiao Jiming to stay alive, please. And, his father too. Just no deaths, please, right now. Okay. This battlefield defeat had destroyed half of Xiao Jiming's lifetime of honor and glory. At this moment, Xiaoqie abhorred his cage with every bone in his body. He chafed against his shackles, opening new and old wounds, raw and bloody. His gaze followed the raindrops to the ground, where the pooling water bore the weight of his silent agony. He held himself together and said calmly, "The meals in the camps are all prepared by our own people. Dage eats the same food as the common soldiers. Harming him means harming thousands of men in the camp. We can't let this go. Whoever did this will pay with their lives." The mess cooks who prepared the food have already been executed. Zuo Qianqiu looked at Xiaoqie. It was Jiming's idea. Li Bei had to bear such a grave trespass against them, yet they had reported it as a matter of military provisions adulterated with mold, rather than a pointed attempt at murder. Xiao Jiming had only broken out of the enemy siege after sustaining deep wounds. He'd hung on to consciousness long enough to give the order to execute those mess cooks, all to prevent an investigation into such a conspiracy. A deliberate attempt to kill him suggested a power struggle, and bringing that out into the open would only muddy the waters. It was too easy for Li Bei to be used as someone else's weapon. With Xiao Jiming incapacitated, appointing a new general would fall to Chu Du. Even if Chu Du investigated, who could guarantee that the person who put the poison in his bowl was the true murderer? Killing by proxy wasn't unheard of. Assuming the food tampering was just the first step in a larger plan, if Li Bei reported the attempt and the imperial court couldn't find the perpetrator, the noble clans, in their conniving attacks, might distort the facts and accuse Li Bei of using Xiao Jiming's injuries as a ploy to deceive the court and get Xiao Qie back. I understand the idea of like, oh, an investigation would look bad right now and cause other issues, but I'm also upset that they just killed the cook so we can't do an investigation. That concerns me. You did well too. You didn't tell them you wanted to return to Li Bei to rally the forces and avenge your brother. Zuo Qianqiu's expression was solemn. If you had spoken frankly and fought for command of Li Bei before the emperor, then their guilt tonight would have turned into defensive calculations. It would plant suspicion in His Majesty's mind and set the stage for future troubles. I expected the Grand Secretary wouldn't set me free. Xiao Qie slowly pulled himself together. It's as Shifu says. Grasping at military power will only make His Majesty afraid of me, and I still have 20,000 men of the Imperial Army in my hands. That would be a major taboo. Making a scene right now will only delay aid to Li Bei. Shifu coming here has helped me out of my predicament. When I have my audience with His Majesty later, I'll discuss the issue of the military provisions with the Ministry of Revenue and Grand Secretary in detail. I need to head back at dawn tomorrow at the very latest. Your father has already declared war with Amor at the edge of the eastern mountain range. He's launching a frontal attack as we speak. No matter what, we have to arrest their momentum. This wasn't an appropriate place to talk, so Zuo Qianqiu turned the conversation back to military affairs. It's been a long time since I last led troops. I'll have to familiarize myself with the situation once I get back to camp. The Li Bei armored cavalry's strength lies in offensive strikes, while I specialized in defensive warfare back at Tianfei Watchtower. I need to discuss this with your father properly. There's one more thing. Zhao Hui was also seriously injured in the battle. His only remaining family is a younger sister who married into Chudu. Remember to send Chen Yang to the Ministry of Rights later to let them know that all is well. Just as Fu Man came out to summon Zuo Qianqiu inside, Xiao Qie nodded in acknowledgement. Zuo Qianqiu took one final look at him. You're alone in Chudu. Take care of yourself. Xiao Qie made a formal disciple's bow, and Zuo Qianqiu strode forward, lifted the curtain, and vanished from sight. Fei Sheng had gotten his wish. These days, he was working by Jiang Qingshan's side. Something had gone wrong with Juexi's military provisions, and Jiang Qingshan, who still held the post of Provincial Administration Commissioner of Juexi, was summoned to Mingli Hall to discuss the matter. He was sure to be there for a few hours at least. Fei Sheng's old habits of laziness reared their head again. Hoping to rest for a moment in the office, he sent a junior eunuch to fetch him some food. He was sitting on the chair waiting with one leg casually crossed over the other when he heard a sound from the doorway. He looked up.
When the candlelight revealed his guest to be Han Chung, he scrambled up to pay his respects. Han Chung, who had braved the rain to get there, motioned for him to rise. As Fei Sheng stepped forward to remove his superior's overcoat, Han Chung asked, "Has His Majesty summoned anyone for a meeting?" Fei Sheng knew what he wanted to ask. He replied deferentially, "Marshal Zuo is here." "Zuo Qianqiu?" Taken aback, Han Chung blinked. The Prince of Libei certainly lives up to his name. His reactions are so swift, he leaves no opening to exploit. No other candidate in Chudu can surpass Marshal Zuo. It seems the Libei Armored Cavalry is still the Libei Armored Cavalry, after all. Fei Sheng concurred, but didn't pursue the topic. These were matters he'd best not involve himself in, and he preferred to stay as far away as he could. Han Chung saw straight through him. It was for exactly this reason he held Fei Sheng in contempt. These common sons born to concubines were all like this. No guts and no spirit. They eyed the carrot dangling before them all day long, but made no attempt to snatch it. Outwardly, he showed Fei Sheng an amiable countenance. Although this matter involves Jiang Qingshan's subordinates, it's not a job he personally handled. The higher-ups won't blame him for this. Working under him is a good move. It will open many doors for you, he said. He's set to head for Zhongbo next month. When the embroidered uniform guard travels there for work in the future, they'll be relying on you to pave the way, Xiao Sheng. They'll be relying on you to pave the way. Xiao Sheng, work hard and do your best. Fei Sheng murmured his agreement and saw Han Chung out. As he lowered his head to lift the hem of Han Chung's robe across the threshold, he spotted a corner stained grayish black. He hurried to brush it away for Han Chung and fawned on him, saying, "Did your excellency come over on foot? How—" Unexpectedly, Han Chung yanked the corner of his robe away. Fei Sheng's flattery promptly dried up. That's weird. The heavy downpour outside cast Fei Sheng's face into flickering darkness. The office fell so silent one could hear a pin drop. After a beat, Fei Sheng raised his head and forced a smile, as if nothing had happened. "I've wiped off that bit of mud for you," he said, obsequiously. "Your Excellency, please be careful on your way out." Han Chung stared at him and slowly released his grip on his robe. He smiled back, and after a moment said, "You may go about your business." The moment Han Chung had gone, Fei Sheng's face turned icy. Under the candlelight, he lifted his hand and looked carefully at what remained of the mud on his fingertips. There was wood ash mixed in, which the rainwater had turned into sludge. It was hard to make out the color, but he caught a hint of red. The Shi Manor had burned down. Fei Sheng had been all over it looking for Shen Zichuan's missing men, and he remembered. The dye used in the estate was a red clay imported from overseas, very valuable and difficult to obtain. Not even a manor belonging to a prince or the other nobility could match the Shi clan for money and resources. Other than them, no one else in Chudu would use it. What was Han Chung doing at the Shi Manor on a night like this? Fei Sheng wiped away the mud on his fingers. The cold sweat that had broken out on his back when his eyes met Han Chung's had yet to dry. He watched the candle flicker. His mind was awhirl, but he was sure of one thing. Within that brief exchange, Han Chung had already decided to kill him. Oh, that's Han Chung is up to something. Maybe he's working with Shue Xiujua. I don't know. Every time I see his name too, I keep wanting to say Hua Chung. I can't. It just in my head. That's what I'm saying, and I'm like, no, stop. The next day, Zuo Qianqiu mounted his horse again to ride for Li Bei. Xiao Qie accompanied Hai Liangyi to see him out of the city. He couldn't return home, but he could at least send Chen Yang and Gu Jin out. They would follow the grain distribution officials to Huaizhou and Suzhou to supervise the preparation of the military provisions. Nothing could go wrong with the shipment this time. Xiao Qie couldn't trust the men from the 6 ministries, but he had planted Wang Xian in Suzhou long ago, and had also convinced Pan Lin to send Liang Cuishan to Huaizhou. With these men as his eyes on the ground, he wouldn't miss a single detail. Xiao Qie hadn't slept all night. He wiped sweat from his face with a cold handkerchief and climbed into his carriage. When Liang Cuishan returns, he said, I'll have to thank him properly. Shen Zichuan was waiting inside. He hadn't slept last night either, having stood guard at Mingli Hall throughout all the discussions. I've already made arrangements to settle his family in a manor in Huaizhou. Someone will be on night patrol to watch over them, so he can focus on his job with peace of mind. Unlike Suzhou, the officials in Huaizhou have no dealings with us, and now we're asking them to prepare military provisions on such short notice. The Huaizhou prefect can't be pleased. Huaizhou has been exempted from providing military provisions for 8 years. Hai Liangyi named them because they can afford this. Xiao Qie covered his eyes with his handkerchief and slouched back in his seat. After a moment, he continued, Wei Huaigu must be arrested today. We can't let the Ministry of Justice get to him first. They were friendly with the Minister of Justice, Kong Chiu, and had spent a pleasant evening drinking together previously. This bit of friendship, however, couldn't compare to the influence of Hai Liangyi. Xiao Qie had already given up the idea of playing by their rules. If he wanted to cut off any path of retreat for Wei Huaigu, this case had to bypass the joint trial by the 3 judicial offices and land in the hands of the embroidered uniform guard. In Shen Zichuan's hands. Wei Huaigu. Shen Zichuan fiddled with the authority token he had set on the little table and considered this solemnly for a moment. He had already intercepted the express relay report. He didn't want it to reach the Emperor. Yet, he changed his mind at the last minute. Why? Xiao Qie recalled the sight of Wei Huaigu kneeling in Mingli Hall last night. Actually, he was acting strange. Knowing him, he should be trying to pass the buck or pick some scapegoat from the Ministry of Revenue to take the blame. But not only did he not try to wriggle his way out, he even answered obediently. Shen Zichuan set the token back down with a sharp click. Bai Ma Zhou had a bumper harvest last year. If the military provisions have been adulterated with old and substandard grain, where did all the fresh grain go? Xiao Qie pulled the handkerchief off his face and clutched it in his hands. Greed is the motive for injury. If this grain set out from Bai Ma Zhou via Hezhou's waterways, it could bypass Chudu and head directly into Zhongbo, where they can slap a merchant's label on it and sell it at a high price as food for the common folk. The rumors that Jiang Qingshan was going to Zhongbo to assume the position of its provincial administration commissioner were going around before the new year. If someone took advantage of this, then it's clear what's going on. Shen Zichuan looked up and met Xiao Qie's eyes. Someone in the Provincial Administration Commission of Jueshi has been colluding with merchants to resell military grain at a profit. In past years, Jiang Qingshan oversaw the entire operation and strictly checked the provisions, so they carried out this operation on a small scale. But this year, Jiang Qingshan is due to be transferred out of Jueshi. He entered the capital after the new year to report for duty and has remained here undergoing the judicial process of vetting and waiting for a review. Without him supervising Jueshi's preparation of the military provisions, he left an opening for them to exploit. It's just that no one expected them to be so audacious as to swap the provisions with moldy grain. There can't be many with the capacity to move so much grain. The look in Xiao Chia's eyes was deep and unfathomable. No one would touch this transaction without a caravan of traveling merchants to handle the goods. Shi Hongxuan, Shen Zichuan said slowly. Shi Hongxuan. Xiao Chia said the name with certainty. He died not because of you or me, but because he'd already become a sacrificial pawn, too capable of implicating others with what he knew. Wei Huaigu tried every means possible to shove the blame in the Ohua Pavilion case onto Shi Hongxuan. Was it because the two of them were already privately reselling military provisions for profit? Wei Huaigu was worried Shi Hongxuan would be subjected to a thorough investigation, so he wanted him dead. Shen Zichuan contemplated this. It makes sense. Shi Hongxuan said before that Wei Huaigu was too money-minded. Why did he agree to Wei Huaigu's demands so quickly? He knew Wei Huaigu well, and easily assumed he would blackmail him. But if that's the case, with Shi Hongxuan dead, Wei Huaigu had no need to take the significant risk of continuing their operation. I suspect Wei Huaigu isn't responsible this time. Someone knew about the earlier deals and held it over him as leverage. He must have known as soon as he saw the relay report that he'd been set up. There's no escape for him now. And considering that he didn't attempt to exonerate himself, I'd say it's very likely he knows who the other party is. He's trying to imitate Hua Siqian now, using his own life to prevent the Wei clan from falling further. Listening to the drumming of the rain outside as they unraveled the deceptions and schemes, Xiao Chia felt exhaustion wash over him. Xiao Jiming had done what was necessary. Li Bei's timely execution of the mess cooks had prevented Li Bei from becoming a pawn others used to eradicate dissidents. No, maybe they weren't just a pawn. The perpetrators wanted to use Xiao Jiming's defeat to reduce Li Bei's military power. They wanted to break up the Li Bei armored cavalry, which had ever been in the hands of the Xiao clan, and hand it over to Chudu with command and control. Even if they couldn't topple Li Bei entirely, this could put them under Chudu's supervision, thereby holding the Xiao clan in check. If Commander Zuo hadn't arrived in time last night, there in the cramped carriage, Shen Zichuan held Xiao Chia's hand and looked at him. Then Chudu would have appointed a new general by the morning, and the Li Bei armored cavalry would no longer be the Li Bei armored cavalry. Xiao Chia's fingers were ice cold. After a long moment, he lifted his hand to stroke Shen Zichuan's hair. The Li Bei armored cavalry is the army of our great Zhou, he rasped. Father built it with his own hands. It's far more important than my brother and me. All these many years, Chudu has never understood us. We are the impenetrable fortress in Li Bei, not traitors. That is the end of the chapter. Also, yes, Henry, ow. And also, I hope they get some sleep. You know. Yeah. So, Last chapter for the day, I think. Is that what I said I would do? Yes. We're on page 195 for chapter 92, which is called Anxiety. Great chapter title, especially for what's going on right now. Yeah, very descriptive of how I'm feeling. The sky was dark by the time the rain stopped, only a few thin rays of light piercing the thick clouds. The coming and going of black boots kicked up fallen water, sending drops splashing across puddles that reflected the fractured dome of heaven. It was the beginning of summer, yet Chudu seemed still stuck in the rainy season. It had been days since the capital last saw clear skies. Hailiang Yi, finally given a minute for himself, sat on a wooden chair drinking strong tea. He was old, and it was hard to keep his spirits up. He was already feeling fatigued, but there were officials bustling around him attending to their duties, and documents exchanging hands that required his perusal and approval. He was not at liberty to rest. Secretariat Elder. Kong Cho left the cases on his desk long enough to take a chair below Hailiang Yi and said respectfully, "We must hold the Ministry of Revenue responsible for the disaster with the military provisions." This pupil submitted a request to His Majesty yesterday for a joint trial conducted by the 3 judicial offices. This matter can't be delayed. Perhaps this pupil should make the arrests tonight. Hailiang Yi was slow to answer, brushing the tea foam in his cup aside. He looked out the window, and only after a long time had passed did he say, "Sitting for so long has made me tired. His Majesty is still having his meal. Come with me for a walk outside." Kong Cho took Hailiang Yi's overcoat from a junior eunuch and draped it over the older man's shoulders. The two walked together out of the office. The light outside had faded. Lantern in hand, Kong Cho followed Hailiang Yi along the paths of the small garden within the Secretariat compound. "You want to arrest Wei Huaigu, and there's nothing wrong with that." Surprisingly, bathing in the night wind made Hailiang Yi more comfortable. He took a few more deliberate steps. "This incident concerns the stability of the frontier. Certainly, you mustn't be too lenient with Wei Huaigu. Handle it by the book." Kong Cho lit the way for him. He guessed Hailiang Yi still had something to say. Dropping into more familiar tones, he said, "I shall do as teacher says. This pupil thinks the same." He was unbelievably brazen this time. "Even if the Empress Dowager wishes to shield him, it'll do no good. This pupil has seen how he's acted increasingly out of line this year. Someone should have checked him a long time ago. Military affairs are not like other governmental business. Malfeasance on this scale must never be tolerated or condoned. That the Prince of Libe has donned his armor to ride onto the battlefield once again is an admonition to Chudu." Hailiang Yi stopped and stood in silence for a long while. Night was falling, and he could no longer see the glow between the sky and the earth. Xiao Fengshu is the king wolf. In all the years of the power struggle between Li Bei and the Hua clan, he has stayed behind the lines due to ill health. He has watched as Xiao Jiming exhausted himself, and Xiao Jie remained trapped in the imperial city. He placed both his sons in dangerous circumstances. Why do you think he did this? Affected by Hailiang Yi's tone, Kong Cho's heart grew heavy. Concessions. The Prince of Libe is making concessions to Chu Du via his sons. The long-standing noble clans have established themselves as a fortress in the capital, and he has bucked their rule from the frontier. Perhaps he once had the opportunity to advance, but he retreated. He retreated, yet the Empress Dowager didn't understand. Physically and mentally drained, Hai Liangyi continued. The Empress Dowager didn't understand, and neither did Wei Huaigu or the noble clans. Xiao Fengshu broke through their antiquated hegemony. His retreat was not out of fear, but because he was willing to accept the sovereign-subject relationship between our Zhou Empire and Li Bei. But as they say, that which waxes will wane. Chasing after the Xiao clan like this to beat them down is as good as daring Xiao Fengshu to retaliate. Power struggles have always been unavoidable, but when they start encroaching on our defenses, it's an ominous sign that preludes collapse. Zhongbo fell during the reign of Xiande. Back then, the imperial court was crawling with corrupt officials who disregarded governance and made a mess of our court. We may try these days to pick up the pieces, but we face trouble within and without. Hai Liangyi coughed in the cool wind, but refused Kong Chou's attempt to take his arm. It's only this year that the state treasury has recovered sufficiently to bear the expenses for regional aid. Jueshi did well in providing the military provisions for the two major armies. With Li Bei and the Bianjun commandery stable at our borders, and with a capable minister like Jiang Qingshan soon to be transferred to Zhongbo, there's hope for Zhongbo's revival. The Imperial College is growing, and counts more and more scholars from common households among its number. The Chief Surveillance Bureau has Sen Yu to lead it, and of the up-and-coming talents, Yu Xiaozai is particularly promising. His Majesty is also no longer distracted by vice and indulgence. Sorrow washed over Hai Liangyi. I have recently thought that a new dawn was beginning in our great Zhou, yet I now find increasingly that though my spirit is willing, my flesh is weak. Alarmed, Kong Chou grasped Hai Liangyi by the arm to support him, the rims of his eyes reddening. Why does Teacher Li speak such demoralizing words? The Prince of Li Bei is not that kind of person. The pupil will preside over the trial personally. This pupil will preside over the trial personally. I will not let Li Bei suffer this injustice. There's still a chance to turn the tide. But Hai Liangyi seemed to sag in his grip. How far could his emaciated body walk while holding up the Zhou Empire? He was just one man. He couldn't save the situation on his own. No more than a single log could prop up an entire palace. He couldn't act recklessly and unscrupulously like the noble clans, nor could he put complete faith in Li Bei. He was the Grand Secretary of the Grand Secretariat, and the palace he supported was Li Jianheng. He was the fulcrum that must maintain the balance in any given situation. Even if the decision he made led to his complete annihilation, he still must make it. Li Bei's fury has been ignited. Xiao Fengshu is leading his troops to the eastern side of the Hongyan mountain range, but once the Biansha threat subsides, he will no doubt turn back to settle the score with Chudu. Hai Liangyi paused for a moment amid a bout of coughing. No matter how he rages when the time comes, we mustn't release Xiao Chiye, even if Li Bei is willing to exchange the heir consort Lu Yizhe and grandson heir Xiao Xun for him. The Prince of Li Bei placed both his sons in dangerous situations with the intent to strengthen them, precisely for this day. Xiao Jiming is severely wounded. This is the perfect time for him to lie low. Xiao Chiye made a name for himself in his youth, and Xiao Fengshu let him remain a hostage in Chudu for 6 years to temper him into steel. Now that this blade is forged and his name is known, allowing his return will sow the seeds of future disaster. We'd be releasing a tiger back into the mountain. I am an old man, Boran. I can't hold out for much longer. We must treat Li Bei with respect, but we cannot release the rope we cannot release the rope we tether them with. Many will lambast me after I die for being age-fogged and muddle-headed. But Boran, who dares say to my face that Li Bei will never rebel? That Qidong will never rebel? Even if the Xiao Fengshu of today can endure it, can the Xiao Chiye of tomorrow tolerate it when he is commander in Li Bei? This is not a risk our great Zhou can afford to take. I will shoulder responsibility for deciding what justice Li Bei should have. They will get all their due. Wei Huaigu had the audacity to resell military provisions for profit. Go ahead and behead him in accordance with the law. I will remonstrate and impeach whoever pleads for mercy. Kong Chou murmured his acknowledgement. Hai Liangyi paused to brace himself before he continued. I will send a letter to the Prince of Li Bei, assuring him that there will be no military inspector. The imperial court will not assign a eunuch to stir up trouble. All major and minor military affairs in Li Bei will continue to be managed by the Prince of Li Bei himself. Kong Chou hesitated. I'm afraid the Empress Dowager won't agree. Is there no emperor in our great Zhou? It's been the rule for 100 years that the harem should not interfere with government affairs. This matter is not up to her to decide. Besides, fighting a war is serious business. What's the use of sending a few castrated bureaucrats who know nothing but how to fawn over others? They're a waste of rations. Hai Liangyi took a few more steps and continued. The eunuchs are all personal attendants of the Son of Heaven. There's a reason the 24 yemen are called the Inner Court. They're long resided deep in the palace, and neither understand the suffering of the common folk nor the ways of the sages. Pan Rugui attended the eunuch school, but everything he did was to frame loyal, upright men and undermine the state. A wise man foresees risks and mitigates them. The eunuch faction has just been eliminated. We mustn't hand them power again so readily. I'll have Chen Zhen draft the memorial when we return. Submit it to His Majesty tonight. Fuman had come looking for them with a lantern in hand. He didn't dare encroach on their conversation, and merely made his obeisance solemnly from afar. Secretariat Elder and Minister Kong, this way, please. You've been summoned to the hall. Hai Liangyi grunted. He didn't look kindly upon Fuman either. Kong Chou supported Hai Liangyi by the arm as they returned along the path. Only when he was right beside the Grand Secretary like this did he realize just how thin the man had become. Grief stabbed at his heart, although his expression betrayed nothing in the twilight darkness. Xiao Chiye tidied his robes and crown and entered Mingli Hall once again. This time, he spotted Xue Xiuzhuo in his place at the end of the hall. Having smoked his pipe outside to steady himself, Chen Yu made his argument. This case involving the military provisions is of grave importance. It involves collusion between officials of our court and merchants for illegal gains. What kind of example is that for the local officials? If we do not deal with it promptly and severely, those scums will think they can get away with it and will never have regard for the law. After an impatient breath, he continued, Your Majesty, I request we start the investigation and prosecution tonight. We must apprehend Wei Huaigu, commit him to prison, and send someone to keep an eye on the Wei clan's account books and banners. We can't let them take advantage of the chaos to transfer their ill-gotten gains who knows where. Li Jianhong had also been without rest for a day and a night. and was now so tired he could barely keep his eyes open. He nodded with some difficulty. The military provisions are indeed a major issue. Wei Huaigu has made a mess of matters. Whether he should be executed or have his properties seized, it is for the Grand Secretariat to decide. Deal with him as you deem fit. The reach of this case is such that even Jiang Qingshan will have to remain in his post pending the trial. Xiao Qie spoke next. The Wei clan is large, with land and power strewn all over the empire. I'm afraid any investigation of their dealings can't be done in under a fortnight if the Ministry of Justice acts alone. Xiao Qie rubbed the... Oh, I saw Xiao Qie rubbed the webbing between his fingers, and my brain was like, wedding ring. That's what you're looking at, is wedding ring. And I was just, I almost said that. That is not what that says. Xiao Qie rubbed at the webbing between his thumb and index finger, slowly rotating his thumb ring. Likewise, the joint trial by the 3 judicial offices regarding the epidemic case is still pending. If we are to nip any similar cases of official merchant collusion elsewhere in the bud, the Chief Surveillance Bureau will also need to free up personnel to leave the capital and check the accounts of the various outer regions. It seems to me that every office has its own difficulties and is similarly short on manpower. Your lordship has a point, Xue Xiuzhuo concurred softly. But everything has its priority. Li Bei is fighting a war as we speak. The matter of military provisions is of utmost importance. The Ministry of Justice and the Chief Surveillance Bureau naturally must put this matter first. There's no question. That blockhead Li Jianheng could tell Xiao Qie was trying to hint at something to him, but after Xue Xiuzhuo's interruption, he didn't know how to continue. Anxious, he looked to Hai Liangyi. What does the Secretariat Elder say? Hai Liangyi didn't look at any of them. After a moment's pause, he said, Is your lordship worried that the joint trial by the 3 judicial offices will take too long? The processes of the joint trial are complex, Xiao Qie explained. Wei Huaigu has been at the top for too long. His thinking and methods are far detached from those of the common man. Who knows what he may try? I worry that detaining him for the considerable length of the trial will cause further complications. That's right, Li Jianheng hastily cut in. The Wei clan has always shown filial respect to the Empress Dowager. If this case drags on too long, we fear the Empress Dowager will be overwhelmed with worry and her health will suffer. But without the joint trial by the 3 judicial offices, we can't thoroughly investigate the various loose ends under him, Kong Qiu countered. These profiteers are only so audacious because they've had Wei Huaigu to shield them. Letting them all run free would be a disaster. I'm not saying we shouldn't investigate. I'm merely worried about the time it will take. Xiao Qie looked at Li Jianheng. Surely this is not the only course for Trudeau to take? Something seemed to click in Li Jianheng's mind, and he slapped his thigh in understanding. If we want this investigation done quickly, we should let the embroidered uniform guard handle it. Shen Zichuan was pretty fast when he handled the matter of Shihong Xuan and those bandits he assembled, no? Why not put him in charge of this too? But this is such a major case, Xue Xiuzhuo objected. It simply won't do to hand it over to the vice commander of the embroidered uniform guard. Shen Zichuan is limited by his rank. It'd be more appropriate to hand it to the chief commander, Han Cheng. Xiao Qie shifted his gaze to Xue Xiuzhuo and hooked his lips into a smile. You're right. Shen Zichuan is not suitable to take charge of this case. He's young and lacks experience, and he has a long-standing grudge against me. I won't sleep easy if we hand it over to him. His quick retreat from his position convinced Hai Liangyi of his course. Hai Liangyi knew Han Cheng was on good terms with Xiao Qie. There was a chance Xiao Qiye might use this connection to push Han Chung too far in his handling of the case. It would be more balanced to hand the responsibility over to the man who had always been at odds with Xiao Qiye, Shen Zichuan. With the two of them standing in opposition and monitoring one another, neither would be able to tamper with the case. Your lordship, Hai Liangyi began, this is your prejudice speaking. Shen Zichuan is young indeed, but it was by imperial decree that he was promoted to his current position, where he's dealt with one difficult case after another. Letting him gain more experience is also a good thing. He turned to Li Jianheng. Appointing the embroidered uniform guard to take the lead as the chief investigators on this case means it will be handled by the imperial prison, and it just so happens that Shen Zichuan is the northern judge. Given his official duties and job responsibilities, that he should handle this case is reasonable. Even so, we oughtn't insist on reckless speed. Although we are bypassing joint trial, the 3 judicial offices should still supervise. Does your majesty agree? Li Jianheng knew Hai Liangyi was making a concession by doing this. Not daring to appear overly partial toward Xiao Qiye, he instantly concurred. We'll issue the edict right away. He can start the investigation tonight. With this, 2 consecutive days of official discussions in Mingli Hall finally reached a momentary conclusion. Everyone would return home and rest for a night. As they exited the hall, Li Jianheng personally instructed the eunuchs to carry Hai Liangyi in a sedan to the palace gates, where his carriage waited, while Kang Qiu and the rest walked out after him. Xiao Qiye nodded farewell to them and left alone. Watching Xiao Qiye's retreating back, Kang Qiu sighed. He's too upset to trust the Ministry of Justice with this case. He wants to investigate with Han Chung. Chen Yu descended the steps. And why wouldn't he? Just look at who Han Chung is. The Secretariat Elder was right to choose Shen Zichuan. Yan Qing, are you heading straight back to your residence? Xue Xiuzhuo walked a few steps behind them, a smile on his face. Yes, I've been sleeping in the office these last 2 days. I should go back tonight and prepare. There are still other cases to handle in days to come. Chen Yu was the type to look after his juniors and often supported their careers. He had personally guided Yu Xiaozai of the Chief Surveillance Bureau, whose career had blossomed under his mentorship. He had also occasionally given Shen Zichuan advice out of genuine concern. He valued Xue Xiuzhuo's talents as well, so when he heard these words, he found it only natural to speak a few words of encouragement. The 3 men stepped into their carriages at the palace entrance and went their separate ways. It was deep in the night when a steward of the Xue Manor heard a knock at the door. He threw on his clothes and came out for a look. Standing at the threshold was a solemn-looking contingent of the embroidered uniform guard, sabers at their waists. Before the startled man could ask any questions, Chao Tianya, in the lead, leisurely pushed the man aside and squeezed his way through the door. Have you eaten? It's so early. You probably haven't yet. Go tell the kitchen to prepare meals for the embroidered uniform guard, too. And while you're at it, wake everyone up. We're here to search the estate. Lifting his lantern high, the steward stepped forward to block his path. Your Excellency, how can you do this? You haven't produced any search warrant. Any who obstruct official business will be arrested and taken to the imperial prison. Shen Zichuan stood at the entrance, his eyes cold and ruthless. Tell Xue Xiuzhuo I'm looking for him. That's the end of the chapter, by the way. That's where we're stopping for today. What a badass moment to stop at. I do love that. kind of a cliffhanger, but a badass cliffhanger, not a bad one, so I can accept it. Shit is about to go down. You are right, Anna. Um, well, I think, um, I think some of the stuff that I just read kind of went right through me. I was trying to process it, but it is going to take a reread and some further absorption. Just like all the conversations about everything going on. I don't know. It was just a lot. It was a lot of information. But I love this moment. And I love also Xiaoqi bluffing and acting like he still has a problem with Shen Zichuan and using it to get his way with like reverse psychology. Blue, you'd think that I'd remember more of what happens in this volume considering I read it like 2 months ago. You know, sometimes it's just like that. There's only, I don't know, at least for me, there's only so much bandwidth that my head can hold at one time. And other things just come in and replace it, you know? So that's, yeah. And, Henry, you're correct. ADHD and QJJ are a deadly combination. I took my meds today and everything, but like some of the, you know, some parts of this book are just, I'm getting like slammed in the face repeatedly with information. Um, yes, I'm sure that rereading, like, I'm sure that after finishing this series, then doing a reread, that would be really interesting because I feel like you would pick up on so many things going on that you did not notice at first. I'm already thinking about doing that, and I'm like, okay, that's a while out, but, yeah. So, um, when we come back on Monday, we will be on page 207 for chapter 93, which is called General. And we are now, like, pretty squarely halfway through the book. So we've got 4 streams left for book 3. What did... we should set aside some time at the end of each volume to discuss. Yeah, so I think it'll be a little more balanced this time when I do the stream for the final stream for this volume. Sometimes those get a little long, but I did page math. I think will be good. So yeah, we'll definitely have like a little discussion when we finish this volume, and we can keep doing that going forward. I can't wait to see what goes down next. And it occurred to me, we still haven't gotten the scene that's on the cover of them on horseback together, and not that time that they were on horseback. Uh, but I'm really curious. Like I'm excited for whenever we get to that scene. Arha and Yuwu need like 5 to 7 streams per volume, and QJJ always needs 8. Earlier Arha volumes aside, I guess these are a little bit longer. And that's another thing is Blue, they're pretty consistent in thickness. Like I have 5 volumes and they all look about the same, which I'm like in thickness, which I'm not used to from 7 Seas. So I'm very thankful for that. Yeah, Blue, 7 Seas tried to keep them somewhat even for once. They might also be on thinner paper though than the other series. That could be a thing. Yeah. And well, let's see. The Yuwu streams I went over sometimes, especially the very last one that was like 3 hours. But yeah, Yuwu, the paper quality changed in the middle of them producing Yuwu, I think. This one, I think, consistently just must have thinner paper. Oh, and Yeah, Henry. I'm guessing they didn't anticipate QJJ to be as popular, so they're not stretching the number of volumes that much. That makes sense to me. Like, if they do that on series that they think will sell more, so they can sell more, but this one they were like, well, whatever. Um, I mean, I don't know how popular this actually is in the context of Seven Seas Danmei. I don't know how big QJJ really is, like, for sales or whatever. But I mean, I don't know. I'm freaking loving it. This has been one of my favorite Danmeis possibly so far. You know, I mean, I'm not done yet, but that's how I feel right now. Um, but yeah, it's not ARHA, it's not TGCF, so no, it makes sense. But it's blue, but it's still popular. Yeah. Um, yeah, the writing is so good, the translation is so good. I just it's kind of I feel like it's gonna spoil me like for like future Don May if the like prose isn't just like amazingly beautiful all the time. I'm gonna be like, no, why? um yeah, Blue, you're already putting it up there with TGCF and ARHA at the moment. Fair. Um Fighting for your top spot. Yeah. The Henry, the translators, put their ussies into it. They did. They really did. Um, I'm so glad for that. Um, so I've got to go, but I will see y'all again on Monday, and I'm sure I'll see some of you at Brittany's stream tomorrow as well. So have a good one. Have a good rest of your week, and I'll see you next time.